name is Darshana, and this is Ethically Yours, a podcast to simplify sustainability. Joining me today are Karan Kumar and Tanushri Shukla, my friends, colleagues, and co conspirators in this movement of sustainability. And today we are talking about what it means to make a career in sustainable fashion. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Ethically Yours. Today I'm doing a little cheating and not really creating extremely original content. But I'm using an audio version of this live chat that we had during Fashion Revolution Week as part of the Global Shapers Mumbai's programming. This particular conversation was between Karan, Tanushri, and I. The three of us work together collaboratively. We have individual roles in very interesting companies and organizations, all working towards pushing the envelope for sustainable fashion. The best part is none of us have roles that have anything to do with design or product development as such. And more often than not, when somebody thinks about a career in sustainable fashion, they end up relating it to being a designer or developing a product. But there's just so much more to it than just making a product. And this entire conversation talks exactly about that. I'm using the audio as is. It's a 1 hour long chat. We had some interesting questions as part of this live conversation. And I just feel that it was very insightful, it was casual. I'm sure it will help students who are looking for opportunities within sustainable fashion, or it could also be helpful for somebody who is thinking of making a switch and exploring newer opportunities. So please go ahead, give it a hear, and let me know if you have any questions or what sort of career choices you're going to make. Also, I have to thank the Global Shapers community, Mumbai, for letting me use this audio as part of this episode. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us on this lovely Saturday evening in extended lockdown period. Uh, it's been riveting. Yeah, I think it's Fashion Revolution Week, as everybody knows, and a quick introduction to the Global Shapers community and myself. My name is Karan. I'm part of this wonderful community of people across the world called the Global Shapers community. That is a voluntary sort of youth community-led action platform run by the World Economic Forum. I'm part of the Mumbai hub, and I represent this great set of people there. And for Fashion Revolution Week, specifically, we as the Global Shapers have an initiative called Shaping Fashion. A lot of conversation has been going on this past week on different issues ranging from things like mainstreaming sustainability and gender equity in cotton farming to kind of materials in our clothes. And we thought it would be great to have a different kind of conversation about what it really means to have a career in sustainable fashion. Everybody's talking about what it is. Everybody is not a designer. Some of us don't know how to make clothes. So what else can you do? And that's where I would like to introduce my lovely other participants of this discussion, Darshana and Tanushri. Darshana works with Lakme Fashion Week and IMG Reliance, and Tanushri works with the Circular Apparel Innovation Factory. Would you guys like to start with an introduction, maybe Darshana, and then we can start?
Sure. Thank you so much, Karan. Lovely introduction. And so I am part of IMG Reliance since November, so fairly new to the team. But what IMG Reliance does as an organizational background is they organize a lot of events within fashion, lifestyle, and sports. Within fashion, the biggest event is Lakme Fashion Week. Within sports, the biggest event is IPL, but there's also the ISL and a lot of other events. Though Lakme Fashion Week is like the bigger entity, specific to sustainability, there are a lot of other um, projects that are undertaken by IMG Reliance. And I'm very, very excited and happy to be a part of this team to lead the sustainability agenda at IMG Reliance through Lakme Fashion Week and other initiatives. It's been 6 months, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Lovely. Tanushri?
Okay, yeah. So I think Darshana has a very front-facing, visible, sort of role in sustainable fashion. There is no one who has not heard of Lakme Fashion Week. But as Darshana said, the three of us are friends and partners and collaborators. And Karan and I kind of work a little bit more behind the scenes. So I work with a consultancy called IntelliCap, which about a year and a half ago started this awesome new initiative called Circular Apparel Innovation Factory, or CAIF for short. And CAIF is essentially an industry platform that is trying to help the Indian textile and apparel sector move towards more circular business models. Working sort of very behind the scenes at the level of the supply chain. So working with a lot of innovators who are innovating in terms of process, not necessarily product, working with a lot of corporate brands, as well as foundations, funders, investors, accelerators, sort of enablers to that entire movement. So we're really this ecosystem builder of various kinds of organizations in the space. And so that's why we kind of collaborate with organizations like IMG Reliance. And so Darshana and I, apart from being friends, also work together on a few projects, which we can talk about. And of course, Karan also, we also collaborate with Karan's organization. So Karan, do you want to go ahead and tell us about yours?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, my name is Karan, but apart from that, there are many interesting things, hopefully, about me. I work with a private philanthropic foundation called the Loudest Foundation. We were until very recently, called CNA Foundation, and we work primarily in the fashion industry. But Loudest Foundation overall, our vision is to really tackle the dual crises of climate change and inequality through the industry verticals of fashion and another industry vertical like the built environment. I specifically work on the materials program at Loudest Foundation under the fashion vertical, where my focus is really on looking at how we can drive sustainability in the global material mix. So how can we sort of find ways to make polyester sustainable, or how can we find ways to ensure that wood-based viscose is not harming ancient and endangered forests. So we work with a lot of our partners across the world to do things like that. And I'm happy to sort of tell you more later, but for now, let's continue this conversation. And I'd love to maybe get started on our first kind of point of, so Darshana, Tanushri and I, we go a little way back, but I think what's interesting to hear about the work we do is sort of what is a day in our life like? And what is it exactly that Darshana does apart from attending fancy fashion shows? And what does Tanushri do apart from consulting? And what do I do apart from sitting and reading proposals? So yeah, it would be, Tanushri, do you want to start with what a day in the life at CAIF is like?
So at CAIF, what I mainly focus on is community building, capability building, and knowledge. And again, big words that essentially mean that I spend a lot of my time talking to a lot of different people, brainstorming about. So essentially, we're an industry platform, which means that our role is really to connect the dots between different players. So it could be, bringing an innovator into the fold of a corporate brand, getting funding from a foundation, and then getting coverage and giving a public platform using, for instance, IMG Reliance. And so that's kind of how the three of us also work together. I mean, to give you an example, we have this really great platform called Changemakers, Circular Changemakers, which is a collaboration between CAIF and IMG. And fun fact, was conceived originally by Karan when he was once upon a time part of the CAIF team. And Circular Changemakers,
it's a rolling really trophy that we are all basically being custodians
moving,
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Changemakers is a really interesting property that CAIF created along with IMG, where the goal was to really kind of, Lakme Fashion Week is known for the beautiful clothes and the designers and the products, but we wanted to also provide that platform to people who work behind the scenes and who work underneath that level of the designer and the product, the innovators and the startups who are enabling these beautiful garments and products to be made and to be sustainable, and also to help them connect with potential investors. So Changemakers is a showcase and a physical event that happens at Lakme Fashion Week, which allows these kind of innovators to come up and pitch their solutions and their ideas to potential investors. And so really building properties like that, enabling collaborations between brands and corporates and innovators, getting down to doing a lot of on-ground pilots. So it's really a lot of fun, innovative, sitting and analyzing the industry, looking, a lot of boring reading like reports and data, but then also using it to see, okay, where are the gaps, what needs to be filled, and what kind of people can we bring on board and create partnerships to address this. And so yeah, super fun, interesting work that has nothing whatsoever to do with designing products, and that's what I kind of love about it.
Yeah, I think on that like little point about it, we're not designing products. Even me in my work, we are designing ways in which we can make this industry sustainable. And I think that's a function of looking at the products, at the people, at the parts of the system, and how do you really make it work well together. And for me specifically, while of course there is a lot of reading, a lot of interaction with people, a lot of sort of figuring out, okay, is this an idea that is important, and is it scalable, is it viable, and can we do something immediately with it? Is it something that 10 years down the line is relevant? A lot of that thinking happens through the readings that I do. It's a lot of emailing back and forth with people like Darshana and Tanushri as well. When they're trying to build collaborations or partnerships, it's a lot of internal also discussion amongst our team. We find that extremely critical because our work is spread across multiple geographies. And in various pockets of the industry. So yeah, that's sort of what a day looks like in a way. Email, read, listen, think. Darshana, do you want to go?
Yes, I want to, because I definitely don't only attend fancy fashion shows. It's like a literal, no, it's not about that. There's a lot of work that goes behind all this glitz and glamour and everything that we see. There are innumerable number of people, not just the curators, not just the core team, but from a production point of view, there's immense amount of work that goes in, and not just from the IMG Reliance side of the story, but also from the designer side. I think to put together a collection to showcase at a platform like Lakme Fashion Week is a huge opportunity, yes, but a lot of hard work. So a typical day in my life at IMG Reliance is a lot of fun. And because it's so new for me, there's a lot of discovery still happening in my day for now. So I think we'll talk about how we got here a little later, because that has some sort of a foundation to why my day looks like it looks. But yeah, there is a lot of, so there is fashion curation as one of the things that I personally do at IMG Reliance, which means that we go out and look out for designers who do interesting work within sustainability. So it could be their work with artisans or with craftspeople, or people who are using innovative materials or innovative techniques to come up with collections that are also commercially viable. Or there are projects that we do with the United Nations or with the Ministry of Textile to boost a certain project. So for example, in the last season, we launched this program that's basically going to build a solution around multi-layer packaging. So that actually has got nothing to do with fashion directly, but yes, because it comes in the larger sphere of sustainability, and because we have partners like the United Nations. And for this particular project, we are very happy to have Afrosha with us, who's the UN Champion of the Earth, who's been cleaning the oceans. So few of my days also go on the beaches. I've gone to clean the beaches with him a couple of times. But yes, it's a lot to do with speaking to designers, understanding their work, speaking to retailers, connecting with people like Karan and Tanushri to see what sort of collaborations can happen and how we can push the needle for sustainability. Lots of emails, lots of brainstorming, lots of interesting people to meet. So yeah, typically that's what it is.
Great. But more importantly, I think at some level, and Darshana and Tanushree, you both touched upon this a little bit, it's really about how do we build collaboration as well, and thinking about the different kinds of things that are happening in the industry. And every time I'm sort of stumped with this question when I think of, like, okay, sustainable fashion collaboration, what does it mean? Especially because you're just hit with this plethora of just brands and designers. But then what beyond that? And maybe this is a good time to also highlight a little bit about how we got to where we were. For instance, Tanushri and I don't have any sort of formal education in fashion or anything to do with fashion, really, but Darshana does. Um, and I think, Tanushri, maybe you want to start because you have the most interesting background, I would say. Yeah.
So do you. Use liberal arts.
Yeah, but she's like IT and publishing.
Yeah, it honestly makes no sense. I really like completely got into this so completely by accident. Just was, yes, working in, digital product development for the publishing industry primarily, and, the tech industry before that. And I guess just started feeling the need to do something tangible with my hands. And so kind of started, getting interested in craft, and that opened up these doors to me. And, kind of through various coincidences and random experiences and chance encounters, a few years later, I ended up founding this organization called Chindi. And so about 6 years ago, I founded Chindi as a social enterprise that kind of worked at the intersection of craft, livelihoods, and sustainability. So creating upcycled products made with textile waste while providing livelihoods to low-income craftswomen from Mumbai slums. But yeah, that's kind of my journey. And then, while working at Chindi, realized that, okay, I'm one organization. The problem of textile waste that we were specifically looking at Chindi is such a huge problem. I actually started learning more about it after I founded Chindi. It was not the other way around. And I realized that it was a problem that really needed to be solved at an industry level, at an ecosystem level. And I also found that, as entrepreneurs, as social entrepreneurs, we would speak a lot about the importance of collaboration, but there wasn't anybody actually helping us structure these collaborations. And so that's where the idea started forming in my mind of, I need to do something else. I need to, work at an industry level. So it was along that kind of journey that, of course, I met Darshana, who was also an entrepreneur at the time, and she'll tell you a little bit more about that. But then, when I was on that quest of, okay, how can I actually address this problem in a bigger way, is when I met Karan, who introduced me to, the good folk at CAIF. And so after a lot of conversations, decided to kind of make that jump and move to CAIF. And yeah, and so very excited that that's what I'm actually doing now. The problem that was kind of keeping me up at night of how do I solve this, how do I work at that ecosystem level, is exactly what CIF is doing. So feeling very lucky to be here, honestly.
Great. And it's super exciting actually that, if you think about it, you don't necessarily, in the journey that you just described, also perhaps similar to mine, that I haven't necessarily built any skills that are relevant over the course of my education to solve these issues. But like I studied liberal education, right? I did like environmental science, and I did like literature and cultural studies. But how do you sort of fit that back into something like sustainable fashion? For me, the journey was a little bit different, but I think it started with a foray into agriculture, really, and looking at how we can make agriculture sustainable, and agricultural systems support smallholder farmers across the world a little more. and in more resilient manners. And then at that point, I of course discovered the idea of also how agriculture and fashion were interlinked, which is a very, very big interlinkage, thinking of things like how cotton is grown, or thinking of things like how other waste materials from farms can actually be used to create textiles, and how farmers are so important to this entire equation as well. And that idea sort of got parked there. And then at IntelliCap, I continued my work in agriculture and across other sectors as well. But fun fact, sorry, maybe I forgot to mention, I also used to work with IntelliCap, where Tanushri is right now. And then sort of started with CAIF, which was the Circular Apparel Innovation Factory, which really sparked my interest in sustainable fashion and matching that sort of idea between industries like agriculture, fashion, and materials. And a happy sort of chance that I too, Darshana, like you, joined Lagos Foundation in November to take on this role in the materials program, which really brings together this whole space of agriculture and fashion and sustainability. And sort of just now that I look back on it, I see that it's been this sort of formative process. But while going through it, it was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Where am I going? How am I doing this? I don't know if you had something like that, Darshana, especially since you come from the fashion industry.
Yeah, it's funny and it's not funny at the same time. So 4 years of proper design school, NIFT, you study everything. You study the supply chains that we now often talk about. But, in the course of their entire curriculum, there was never a mention about how the supply chains are cramped to really, make something called as fast fashion. We actually worship the Zara model for most of our lives while studying. I think, the quick in time, the fact that, oh, the supply chains are really kick-ass. And, we're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And then I did my master's from LCF, and I was living on Primark, like literally. And I had no idea how that bag was worth £1, £2, but my entire house, right from my kitchen, decor items, supplies to my accessories and everything was from Primark, because there was absolutely no exposure to the reality. And my friend and my roommate at that time, she used to write for this online portal called Ethical Fashion Forum. We lived in the same house. I saw her writing for these things, and it was just not in my mental sphere. The typical education system just pushes you to aspire for positions like luxury brand manager, or buyer for an international brand, or a creative head, or things like that. So I wanted to become a buyer all my life. It was only when I understood that there's a lot of Excel sheets to it that I said, oh, it's probably not for me. So, I don't think that these things were even existing 10 years ago. Yes, I graduated 10 years ago. How it happened for me was very organically again. I worked for a lot of retail brands in the country, and I was doing your regular operations marketing, making sure the product is pushed and shoved through the consumer's throat, and there's more and more sale happening. So I've gone through that entire cycle until one day, while I was, Netflixing and chilling, I came across the True Cost. And I was like, where was I living for so long, and that just sort of, it was an awakening, as cliched as this might sound. But, I just felt that I'm from the industry, and if I'm not going to do something, then who is going to? And then it was basically the process of unlearning everything and discovering this entire gamut of sustainable fashion. It's so vast. I think all of us are still discovering. That's how it started. And then I want to do something. So I started, writing a blog, and then I started discovering so many brands. One thing was for sure, that I'm not going to start a brand, because that's not something that I ever wanted to do. So
we know you wanted to be a buyer. It's okay.
Yeah. So then in the process of discovery, when I saw so many brands, I said, okay, let's put up a marketplace, because I'm sure there are people who are looking for these products, who are sort of aware of, fast fashion, and why you need to move to a more conscious consumerism model. So FairTrunk happened, which was my startup back in 2017. It started up as a marketplace and kept evolving and is evolving till today. Because as an entrepreneur in the sustainability sphere, Tanushri and I will agree, there is very little money till today.
There's
And
no money.
no money, yeah. So to make ends meet is a task, but I think we both were extremely driven for the cause, for the passion, for the fact that something really needs to be done. And therefore, when this opportunity came my way, at first I was hesitant because, as every protective entrepreneur, you feel, no, I've built this for so long, and how can I just go back into the corporate world and do this? But then I think it's also about changing perspectives. Like Tanushri said, that after a point we need to be open to the idea of working from within the system, using the opportunities at scale to drive change at a much larger level. So, me talking about sustainable fashion through FairTrunk and reaching out to say 3.5, 5,000 followers on Instagram versus me talking about sustainability via Lakme Fashion Week, which has almost 1 million followers, is just a different scale. And hence hoping that the impact would also be in that similar fashion. So even in the current role, there are just so many interesting projects. And at times I also feel that it's very similar to the things that I was doing at FairTrunk, but the scale, the opportunity, the magnitude is so massive. And you really feel that all the collaborations or all the little actions that you're doing right now are eventually leading to some positivity or some sort of, the needle is actually moving. So yeah, I think that's how I got here, but it's, sorry.
No, I was just saying that it's the action and the sort of impact did happen while both of you were entrepreneurs as well. If you look at my rack, which I will not show you now, but my bag rack has a bunch of chindi bags.
Chindi products.
Yeah. I know I've shopped through FairTrunk.
Yeah.
So like the impact was there, but I think the scale at which that impact happened was very different compared to now. Yeah.
And I think this kind of addresses Hamsini's question that that she has posted, and I'll just read that out for the attendees who can't see it. Given that you work for a conglomerate that has a lot of business divisions,
I think that question is for me.
That is the question. It's a question for Tanushri, but I want to address it. Because you touched upon it, right? So there are business divisions that are not sustainable per se, but how do you balance that at a group level in your role? And the question is, I think the answer is exactly what Darshana just said, that the idea is, number one, to work from within the system. I think that's a very conscious choice that at least the two of us definitely made, or all three of us made in a way, that, we could be these rebellious, independent entrepreneurs. But we somewhere felt like, what we are doing needs to have a larger stage, needs to have a louder voice, and needs to bring in more people. And so, I think what we are really doing is using the platform, rather than saying, oh, no, not sustainable, leave it out of the conversation. It's also about like saying, okay, sustainability needs to become normal, needs to become mainstream. And the way that happens is that you have that conversation in the same breath as, and in the same room as, and with the same people as, the not sustainable ones. And I guess that's like the conscious decision that we made. Of course, like a lot of people disagree, which is fine, but we need all those voices.
But I think it's also important for everybody to just calm down a little when we're talking about sustainability. Because
you say this during Fashion Revolution Week.
No, calm down in the sense that, it's I don't think it's even true to be a purist when you're talking about sustainability. We cannot be sustainability Nazis over here and just keep pointing fingers at people saying, if I am, yes, I carry my own water bottle, but if I'm dying someday and I have to buy a bottle, I am going to buy a bottle. And then I'm going to just put it in the right place where it's recycled. So I think there are a lot of times where just people look at it, oh, but she has a plastic bottle. Oh, but she's doing this. Oh, but, we are humans. And I think even if we do a little bit slightly broken, slightly mended here and there, the fact that we are all moving in that direction should be more important than how perfectly we are all doing.
Correct. And you know, touching upon what both of you also just said, thinking about our time, about how this sort of crisis of coronavirus has impacted industries across the world, including the fashion industry in many, many, many ways. I think what is, while I don't want to go into the impact per se, everybody's talking about it. I do want to recognize the fact that, at least from our perspective, working in this industry, what we've realized is that the gears are moving now to really look at the supply chain, to look at that longer tail, not just the product on the rack, but what goes in behind it. And how do you make that entire system sustainable and uh, resilient to shocks like this or any shocks? And which is why we need sort of more people, working different kinds of careers in sustainable fashion, not making products, but working with people in the supply chain to drive things like traceability. You need people working to sort of figure out the waste system. You need people figuring out sort of the IT and the back end and the logistics of actually managing that entire system. And I think that's what is important, that people don't necessarily see that. And Darshana, maybe you can highlight this. Did you learn any of this in your formal fashion education?
No, like I said, I mean, we were just going gaga over Zara's model, like,
Yeah.
in whatever the little. So my master's was in fashion entrepreneurship, and my degree was in design. So in design, so now we talk about like what is a zero waste pattern cutting technique. That's something
Yeah.
that a lot of colleges are teaching now. But throughout the 4 years, I can't even imagine the amount of fabric we must have wasted in just learning pattern cutting or just experimenting with things. And unfortunately, I don't think that has changed today either, because I do go for guest lectures at NIFT or some other colleges, and so we do like a nice introduction session with them, and the students have come up to me and saying, but ma'am, we do pattern cutting and then so much of muslin goes to waste. What do we do with that? So it's funny, but what's also interesting is I just told them that, why don't you make accessories out of it, and see if you can use it or you can give it to friends. And the next time I went, they actually had a few accessories made, and they have hand embroidered it, and they had like a small collection to showcase. So I think overall the awareness is increasing, but it is yet to come as part of curriculum or as part of a skill in the formal education system. It is still a small module in like a 4-year course. It used to be optional until a couple of years ago, but now it is mandatory. But it is still like a very, very small bit. Yeah.
And the thing I find is, this is what I find interesting, right? So having done not as many as you, but a few of these lectures, and being invited as a jury for student projects or things, is that the emphasis is still very much on the end product. So
Yeah.
it's great that they're coming and saying, what do I do with the waste muslin? But they're not thinking about the whole process and the whole business model and the system that leads to that muslin being wasted at the end of that. And that the product design is really one of the last steps and one thin slice of this entire big system. And and I think we were talking about this earlier, that the corona, this whole like situation that's happening right now, it has really revealed, it really is a crisis. Apart from being a heartbreaking humanitarian crisis, it is a crisis of the supply chain. It is really like, whether we realize it or not, the supply chain is what all of us are really concerned with right now. Whether it is the supply chain of our groceries, of our fresh vegetables, of our essential, non-essential, how are things reaching us, the logistics, the shipping, the stores, how the stores are receiving it from so the supply chain is really where it's at, and the product is just comes at the very, very end. And that's what I think, like the three of us, we work in sustainable fashion, but we work on that boring behind the scenes supply chain, not just the product. That's what makes this interesting, and we need more people.
I don't think it's boring. I think it's extremely interesting, Tanushri.
I don't know why I keep calling it boring. I really love my job.
We've been doing it for so long.
Listen, I have to
But
add something though. So there is one particular course specifically in NIFT right now, which is like a master's program in sustainable systems. And I think there is Shubhi here who is a part of the attendee. She joined me to be a jury member on one of the juries there.
hmm,
And that particular program is very interesting because that talks about sustainability from ground up. And there were interesting projects that the students had presented, right from building a sustainable campus to using waste as a resource. So yeah, I mean, I'm not extremely disappointed in the education system. I'm sure there is
yeah.
some light. So yeah.
But let's sort of flip that as well, right? And say that, okay, the fashion education bit is one thing. It's creating a separate kind of people, it's creating a separate kind of like workforce or entrepreneur or whoever it may be. But at the same time, there is all of these outsiders, these like tech people, these engineers, these doctors, these
Mm.
various kinds of people who have
People,
suddenly decided,
researchers, yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
who have decided that, oh, okay, their work can be applied to make fashion sustainable. And how do they do that? And that's been extremely interesting for me to see and sort of, discuss with them, especially through platforms like Circular Change Makers or Circular Design Challenge, right? Which are both amazing platforms that IntelliCap and IMG Reliance run at Lakme Fashion Week um, every year. But for me, that has been extremely interesting. Like, how do you see these outsiders coming into the fashion industry and
Mm.
creating jobs for themselves? Like the CEO of a IT company that is suddenly now, okay, screw this, I'm going to start a like a platform for sustainable fashion or
Yeah.
things like that. And or an engineer who suddenly decides that, oh, okay, I did this and maybe I can actually take waste from like this crop that's grown in my backyard and make vegan material out of it, and then sell that to high-end fashion brands. And of course, like Tanushree said, that at the end there is that product design thing, but then there's a lot before that, and these are where those outsiders are actually coming in. And what are your views on that?
I mean, I have always considered myself an outsider to fashion, right? So no fashion design
Same.
training, became social entrepreneurs completely by accident. At that time, again, the reason I feel so passionately about this, it's not just about product thing, is because for Chindi, the reason it became a brand and made products is because that was the only vehicle that I saw. That was the only kind of pathway I saw to, to make a difference. And it took me many years to realize how to go kind of backwards and deeper into that process. Um, but yeah, sustainability has become such an amazing vehicle for these outsiders to come in, and to find those applications, in fashion, in textile and apparel. It's not just discovering an innovation and realizing an application in apparel. It's also, we are seeing so many enterprises. For instance, an example of a dry waste management company that we are currently in talks with for a waste management pilot, who have been doing this for decades and are working with, paper, plastic, thermocol, but now are suddenly awakening to, hey, there's also this issue of textile waste. We went to them and said, you have the entire infrastructure and you can actually use this to, the existing process, existing infrastructure to address the issue of textile waste. So also just these little pivots that can happen in existing enterprises who may have never even thought about this as a space before. It's great to see that, because the conversation is also getting louder, right? And so much of that has come from consumers and, the sort of brands responding to it. So outsiders are here to stay. Nerds take over the world, all of that. I fully like support
True.
this movement.
There's another side to this. I think we are looking at outsiders coming into fashion now from a startup ecosystem point of view as well. But what's interesting is, so IMT Reliance runs this program called SHAW, which is Sustainable Resolution, which was launched last August, where 16 of the mainstream retail brands of India have voluntarily come together and made a commitment to become more sustainable by 2025. Now, in the process of helping them do that, we discovered a lot of organizations across the supply chain who were doing amazing things. It could be from a fiber company to a certification company to a tech company that talks about transparency. And that's when, I discovered ZDHC, which is this chemical discharge organization. And there was this lab in Bombay who, their entire family is a family of chemical engineers. And their entire education has been so from the owner, his father and his daughter. They're all chemical engineers. But their job is to test the chemicals and the dyes that go into apparel. So, as a matter of fact, this phenomena is not new. It's just that because sustainability right now is demanding that amount of innovation to really take it to the next level, it's not merely designing as we have known it to be. Therefore, I think these interventions are becoming more interesting. This year, Tanushri, we discovered Fleather as part of the Circular Design Challenge, which is part of this Kanpur flower cycling. Is that correct?
Recycling.
No, I think they're called flower cycling.
Oh, flower cycling.
Yeah.
Right.
So they run this brand called Fool, where they make agarbattis out of discarded
PHOOL.
PHOOL. Yes, and we are both consumers of Fool. Tanushri and I, and we were very excited to tell the founder that हम तो use करते हैं Fool. So anyway, so that was their main product. But now from that same raw material, which is discarded flowers from temples and removed from the rivers, they have made a leather alternative called Fleather. So that's an interesting intersection of technology and fashion as well. And I'm a huge fan of 3D printing. I think that as a technology is still yet to be explored. I am waiting for somebody to make a 3D printed dress for me.
One day, Darshana, hopefully you will be able to do it.
Yeah.
Not just make a 3D printed dress, make a dress for me.
For me, yeah. Selfishness, yeah.
Consumerism. But there's an interesting question that's come in from Sanvar.
Yes.
On the topic of consumerism.
Yeah. And consumer behavior and choices. And I think it's an extremely important question that I want to start answering it by saying that my perspective after having seen or tried to do consumer level sort of initiatives has been that either you work like people with people like Darshana, at the level of actually reaching out to 1 million people at a time and driving that. So at least 10% or 20% get some sort of impact. But even then, I think for me, it's been, my focus has shifted now to actually saying, okay, perhaps it's actually not even time to start looking at consumer behavior in such a scaled up manner, but instead we tackle that supply chain. Now, when that supply chain is sustainable, whether or not the product on the rack is sustainable, is not a question the consumer will have. They will consume what they are given. I will take a product that I see on the rack no matter what, and then if it is sustainable, great. If it's not, then there's work to be done, and I see that that's my perspective that has shifted. I don't know about Tanushri and Darshana. What about you two, after having run a brand and worked with consumers as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's a choice that I kind of made consciously. And I have so much respect for brands like Bohiko and brands that are really working. Well, yeah, who are really working on the customer and on making the customer understand what they're doing, and really saying buy this product because it's sustainable, because it's handmade, because it's a better alternative. And it's a tough job, it's a tough job. And I think very much like what Karan just said, what I personally decided to do is work at that, behind the scenes and say, okay, can we get to a point where it's easy for a brand to be sustainable, where it is possible, and they are enabled to make better choices when it comes to their materials, their labor, etc. And if we can enable every single brand to do that and to make that choice, then the burden is not so much on kind of driving that message. Then the burden really is just saying, I'm making a fabulous product. And essentially that's what you should have to do. When you're selling a product, you should just have to show how fabulous it is. But here there's this double burden on sustainable brands of showing how fabulous it is, doing everything that a regular brand has to do, plus also kind of informing and educating. And it's a huge burden that is on brands right now. I feel that needs to be kind of lifted off by organizations like ours.
Yeah.
I think my perspective has changed quite a bit through the past 3-4 years into this. I think as an entrepreneur with the limited access to smaller brands, I was always under the perception that the bigger brands are only hogwashing all the time and that there is no real work that's happening. But now that I am actually working with brands like, or organizations of the level of Bestseller or Aditya Birla or Spiker or Levi's, there is actually some commendable work that's happening. It's definitely going to take a lot of time for them to convert completely, because yes, there are costs at the end of the day, and I'm not supporting cutting corners or cutting costs at any. I'm just trying to show that side of the scenario, which is often generally pushed away, saying, oh no, it's just greenwashing all the time. So for example, me personally, my consumption has just like reduced drastically from what I used to now. And now also when I go out, I make sure that you're looking at the labels, you're understanding what's happening. And to my surprise, I find better cotton, like BCI cotton, in a lot of brands. There is sustainable viscose used by a lot of brands and at affordable prices. So for example, a Vera Moda or an Only, I have 2 denims now, which are better cotton and are the same price. They're around 3.5 grand. So it's not a huge spike in the cost as well. But I think it is going to take some time for the brands to also transition completely from where they are to the aspirations that all of us have and they have as brands as well. So yeah, did I answer or did I just
You answered another question that came in
really?
on how sustainable fashion is pricey
Yeah.
and compared
Yeah.
to
No,
conventional
but that's a
fashion.
really good point, because like CIF, our anchor partner is Aditya Birla,
Hmm.
ABFRL, of course, and of course, like similar to the first question we got, there is, oh, you're talking about circularity, but you're associating with corporate brands. And I think that, as Darshana said, I have also been very surprised to discover that yes, it does tend to be a little bit siloed. So perhaps within a large corporate brand, there will be a CSR department or a sustainability department that will be very focused. But that
Yeah.
department is doing a lot of work and is really a champion and is really kind of, looking at every aspect. And even if they're not being able to make that change because these are large vehicles that take time to turn, they're slow moving, they are definitely aware and they're always looking for solutions. And so yeah, I think that again, that decision to say, okay, I'm not going to reject you because you look like something and represent something. I'm going to look at you carefully and I'll see, where you can do better and I'll help you do better. So that's the kind of shift that I feel we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
everybody's doing their bit. I think everybody's doing their bit. We just, like I said, need to calm down. Of course, if you are a purist, then there are a lot of brands which literally source from the artisan, will have a natural dye on it, will come to you in a zero waste packaging, will cost you 10,000 upwards. But I think that's where all of these prices also sort of add up when you
yeah,
do 10 products in a season versus 100 units in a season.
Yeah.
But I think it's about time that we start balancing the lens that we're looking through for sustainability, when if you're talking about change happening at scale and not just
yeah,
smaller brands that are cropping up every day, and newer products are coming up.
The other thing I want to mention here is, Karan, perhaps you could talk a little about the project that CI is doing with the Laos Foundation on business models. that are enabling sustainable fashion to become a little bit more accessible at a lower price point. So we are actually doing a project that has been funded by the Loudest Foundation, which is looking at rental and resale models. And those are kind of innovations at the business model level rather than the product level, that are making fashion and sustainable fashion available at, kind of affordable price point to a wider customer. And that's a little bit of an interesting space for innovation as well.
Yeah, I think I mean I don't know what I should say since you're doing the project, Tanushri. But
Don't give it the money.
not me, my organization. But I think, yeah, what's interesting about just that and sort of things that we're seeing is that there is this drive towards not only sort of sustainability from the lens of the environment, but also this sort of how do you marry the social sustainability plus that environmental sustainability that's existed. And I think more often than not, what we've seen over the years is that people who think about sustainable fashion, even in the CSR wings, etc., are focused on that social lens, right? I've seen that most of these sustainability outfits, even if it's a question of actually working with them, building a career in this sustainability space, it's been, I work with craftsmen, I work with artisans, I work with these village level entrepreneurs. Um, it's never really been sort of on that systemic or more sort of industry level as much as we'd like it to be. And I think that is really what is opening up now as well, that brands are starting to recognize the need for innovation. All these consulting firms, including Intelligap and perhaps the big fours, are starting to look at this as a topic of interest. Platforms and sort of enablers like IMG Reliance or others also have started to think about how they can actually create better teams and more sort of innovative ideas on how they can make fashion sustainable. And that's given us the opportunity to then sort of fold out and try these new different ways of doing it as well. I think, I don't know if both of you thought this when you were on your entrepreneurial journey. Would you think that you'd ever have come here, right? And then all three of us would have collaborated to try and build things like circular change makers or circular design challenge, in my previous role at least. But or sort of our collaboration like with organizations like Intellicap as well on particular grants that we've given out. But yeah, it's quite interesting to just see this, and I'm not sure if you guys agree with me, but at least on that idea of sorry, Sanwar just put a question up. I was just reading it. Yeah, on this whole idea of social sustainability versus environmental sustainability.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that especially this project is trying to address, right? That so as you said, there's social sustainability spoken of at the level of SHGs, craft, etc., and then there's environmental impact and sustainability spoken of at the level of all of these amazing sustainable brands that are out there. And those two conversations kind of need to come together. And so what we're trying to do with this project is really look at what is the, we always look at the environmental impact of circular business models like upcycling, like reselling, like remanufacturing. But what is the case for the social impact and the human impact there? And I think now more than ever in these times, that project seems so relevant. So that's another interesting thing that we are working on at CIF.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, I know that we have sort of 3 minutes left, so maybe I just want to get a quick sort of roundup, from both of you as well. And I know Sanmar's question.
For like another
Yeah, we can keep talking. That's not a question. That's not, but other people have things to do.
Might be boring fun.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Sanmar's question is also interesting, and perhaps, that is a much larger discussion that we can have separately. But
I do think quickly, I think Myntra's homegrown brand, I forget the name, but
the other attendees can't see the question. Yeah, you have to read
oh,
out
sorry.
what the question
oh,
is.
I'm so
sorry.
sorry.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry. She's a Zoom webinar pro.
Yeah.
I think.
No, I'm sure. I don't know. So Sanwar basically had a follow-up question where he's asking what would it take to have big online retailers like Myntra, Amazon, etc., to have a filter or category of sustainable fashion. and I'll just one line on that. I think that Myntra is already one of their homegrown brands. I can't recollect the name now, but their denim brand, they had started using recycled PET as a raw material for their denims. And I think Amazon has also opened something for smaller brands, which is similar to Etsy, which I think would be promoting, smaller conscious brands. So I think everybody has sustainability in their agenda. I'm sure. I think it's just about, taking
How they
that
do it.
leap of faith and the amount and the energies that they want to focus on
Yeah.
solving that problem.
But for me,
You have 1 minute.
for me, that is not the goal. The goal is not that an Amazon should have a category of sustainable fashion.
I
Yeah.
The goal
agree.
is
Yeah.
that fashion is sustainable fashion.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe on that note, to wrap up, the idea being that you need sort of more people working at this sort of supply chain level, sort of thinking out of the box. Not just from a product angle, not saying I will use specific sustainable materials for my products, but how will you actually work beyond that and actually say that, okay, I will support the system to be more sustainable. So no matter what material I use for my product, it is sustainable. And I think it's not going to happen overnight, like anything except for coronavirus, obviously. But it's going to take time and more people like Darshana and Tanushri to challenge their own ideas and actually try new things out, look for different kinds of opportunities. And yeah, that's how they would actually make fashion sustainable, in my opinion, through the work that they do. Uh, any
We need
famous
more
last
outsiders.
words from the both of you?
We need more outsiders.
Yeah,
No, even insiders can adapt. It's okay.
yeah.
This is becoming an insider
Fine.
outsider war. I don't know. Just come one, come all. I think there's a lot of work to be done. Just find what you find interesting and get hooked to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Karan,
lovely.
what
I
are your
think
thoughts?
my famous last words. Actually, what I wanted to say just before I sort of asked for both of you to end this and wrap it up also, that at some level, we are all on a journey to figure out how we are going to make fashion sustainable. But what's extremely interesting about that journey is that it opens up these new opportunities at every corner and every turn you take. The problem is we're not able to find enough people to actually help us uh, maneuver these multiple corners and turns and sort of meanders. And that's what is really missing, right? That we need more people to come and say, okay, I'm ready to work in the sort of non-glamorous side. I'm ready to work not on designing a product. And that's what it really is for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that brief chat that we had earlier,
Yeah.
and we spoke about sharing ideas and people being extremely possessive about their ideas. I think that needs to go,
Yeah.
because we all really need to come together for uh, that one cause, and just work together as a team, as preachy as it sounds. But I think it's okay to have 2 fair trunks or 20 fair trunks, or it's okay to have 1 boheko or 20 bohekos. It's just that much more nicer to reach out to that many more people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, we
Great.
want 20 vehicles
Yeah.
for sure.
On that note of collaboration and camaraderie and multiple other things.
Community.
Thank you, everyone. Community. Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone, for
much.
attending. Yeah, see you soon. Take care, stay safe, and stay home.
Hey, it's great to see you stick around till the end. I hope you enjoyed this episode and will come back for more. Please do share, subscribe, or whatever that you typically do to our podcast, because we are going to need some love and support. See you next time.